somebody sign something because the prerec's not coming up for me.
Oh, really? Just, if you just shoot me an email, So again, I'll just answer the question here. If anybody's trying to sign up for 102 and doesn't have the prereq, just shoot me an email and I'll do the prereq override for you and get you in there. I think the prereq is just having this course, and it could be, and this is one of those weird, strange catch-22s that seems to exist within the registrar's office, is that until you finish this course, you can't register for the next one. But the other issue that we run into is frequently you'll see courses being canceled because there aren't enough students enrolled. So
Oh, God.
round and round we go. Anyway, so just shoot me an email, and it's just as simple as me pushing a button to get you the prereq override, and then you can get into the course. So.
What days is it, Tyler?
Sorry?
What days is it?
It is Tuesday, Thursday from 11 something to 12 something.
Yeah, I can show you
11
that.
to 12 20.
Yeah, I'll show you this. I'll just show you really quick too while we're on the topic. So if you're looking to get into 102, spring semester 2017. So these are the courses I teach.
Oh, geez.
I've lost my adjunct pool, so, and a lot of these are duplicate sections, but here's 102 right here, and so this course is cross-listed with this one, so you can go ahead, it's CRN 34105, if you want to go ahead and enroll in that.
34105, and that's through the CCS?
Yeah,
Okay,
you can enroll in that one,
Where the interview is?
or in this one,
The other one pulls it up on the calendar.
yeah. I think,
Cool.
so some of these other courses are graduate level advising, basically. So there it is, Tuesdays and Thursdays from 11 to 12:30.
Cool.
Gallagher 225.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the rest of the chapter. 102, 101, jumping ahead, 13. And I want to spend just a couple minutes on that.
Oh, yeah, regarding that Chinese incident on Thursday, scaffolding collapsing.
Yeah, what about it?
I spoke to the Chinese exchange student.
Oh, really?
She said that the people responsible were arrested.
Wow.
And they'll be held accountable for the mistake that happened.
That's intense.
Yeah, so I guess there's one of the penalties on that end, but
Yep.
yeah, there's no greater penalty than the loss of life.
Not really.
Because they're really considered their efficiency with workers, the experience of completing a project. They'll only finish it faster the next time, more efficient as they keep going.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of experience. But if they
Yeah.
lose their workers, they're losing a greater investment than any money can replace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At least mine.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I just want to look at this chart for a little bit, and I was thinking about this a little bit more on Tuesday night. All of this to the right, and so I'm looking at this, if you think about your XY axes, and I think we explained this, whereas these are things that save you money, these are things that cost you money, but all of them reduce the amount of carbon emissions. And I think we're talking about adaptation versus mitigation. What I'm wondering is, where's this stuff and where's this stuff? where's the thing that actually sucks carbon back out of the atmosphere and saves you money? So I was just thinking about this a little bit and thinking, well, what if you had something over here, which would be like, say, tree planting? Because now you're actually going carbon negative. You're not just reducing the amount of CO2, you're not reducing the amount of CO2 emitted, you're reducing the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. And this is going to, it cost you some money to send somebody out there to plant trees. There might also be something over here, we're talking about, I don't know if I saw it on here, motor systems efficiency. I don't see bicycle riding on the chart anywhere, but for me, I'm gonna go out here, riding my bike, didn't spend the money on fuel, and I don't know if I'm actually carbon negative. Good question. Something to think about.
Depends on your diet.
Yeah, it depends.
The fuel that goes into you.
Right. But just think about that a little bit. What could you actually do? It could also be one thing that our this little company we're looking at would be where you're. Well, let's see. Now let's do it over here. Where you're going to make money and you're going to keep carbon out of the atmosphere. So it was just on the news this morning saying that slash burning is under a lot more scrutiny just this morning. And so let's just look at this and do slash to biochar. So right now we know that coal is selling at $40 a ton, something like that. Biochar, $1,200. So rather than going and setting that carbon on fire, you're putting it back into the ground and making money. Wow. So there you go. Okay, we talked about this slide. Yeah. All right. So here's the next deal. And remember, we talked about the different pollutants being regional, global, local, etc. So you can see right here, in the bad old days, there really were not too many SOx scrubbers on coal-fired power plants. You had a lot of acid rain. That was damaging crops, and now damaging physical structures, statues and things like that. So the impact is money. Less productivity on crops, and literally crumbling infrastructure. So now you say, well, let's fix that. Let's capture those SOx off the bat. And you remember where sulfur comes from. Sulfur is that one cysteine amino acid that's in all proteins. So
That little smells like eggs.
yeah, it smells like eggs. Exactly. Okay, now here's another thing to consider. Here's sort of the natural Earth. These are things that have kind of go on in the background with or without human intervention. So the atmospheric chemistry has sort of been there forever. Sea ice has been ebbing and flowing forever. Coastal zones, the carbon cycle. Forest fires happened long before humans were ever on Earth. Ecosystems, for sure. Same thing with hydrology, oceans. All of these things are sort of there with or without humans. But here we come along. Here's our population. In order to run our civilization, we need some kind of economy. Everybody is obviously interested in their own either home security or national security. We all need food to eat. I think we're at a point now where it would be difficult to look at a single ecosystem on Earth that wasn't in some way managed by humans. Transportation, obviously human health, all of our different technologies, whether it's information or health, science drives a lot of that, and then settlements are just kind of where we live. So, depending on our, who's buying what, who's making what, who's consuming what at what rate, whether it's either food or technology, some kind of emissions generally result, just because of our conventional, all of the conventional energy sources we've talked about up to this point: coal, oil, natural gas. These emissions typically do go into the atmosphere, which affect how the sun's radiation interacts with the atmosphere, which does affect regional climate, and then can have this feedback. So that's the big.
It doesn't mention entropy.
It does not mention entropy, but I'll show you a few slides on that. I've had some fun times giving that talk, especially if you look at the Eric Chasen. If you're digging into that paper, one person you might check out is he was at Tufts when I first met him. He's at Harvard now.
I would say that's one of the biggest penalties of human activity.
Yeah. Check this guy out, though. He takes a really big look at entropy, and his metric is energy. Again, it's energy density. This is how quickly a given system processes energy. And I got a lot of my ideas from him, but he uses energy density rather than entropy. We've had some good conversations about that. But if you want to look into it deeper, Chasen's a good source for that. All right. Okay. So earlier this lecture, Tim came in and talked a little bit about the capital costs for a given energy technology or energy structure. I also mentioned one of our graduates, Ryan Carson, who's working up at Judith Gap right now. He is one of 8 or 9 technicians. He makes $23 an hour. They get paid very well, get paid overtime. He said Invenergy has been a great company to work for. A lot of other companies do not treat their workers as well as Invenergy does. So the capital cost, that's just what it costs to acquire the land, either build the turbines or build the coal-fired power plant. This is what it costs to pay Ryan Carson to run up and down the turbine and fix it when he has to. If you're running a fossil fuel plant, you have to pay for the fuel. Someone had to build the machine for the extraction. Someone had to pay for all of the drills for the fracking. Someone had to pay for the refinery. That has a cost with it. So there's the fuel. If you're running renewables, that doesn't exist. You've just paid for the land. You just there's no fuel cost. If you're running renewables, you don't have a CO2 disposal cost. I also know you're talking a little bit with Keegan Eisenstadt about the price of carbon. So there are these carbon markets sitting out there. Northwestern Energy is considering putting carbon price on their future energy costs. So you can just take this look and see what it's going to cost you to run non-renewables versus renewables. And even this morning I was on the phone with this private investment firm, and what we're showing in our little company is that the firm, they're going to make more money if they go renewable. Because all this goes away, that goes away, that goes away, and we can show that we can actually make more electricity than we use. And I think we're going to see that big time, especially with solar PV on rooftops, where a house can become its own power plant. All right.
Yeah, the carbon price could potentially be given to companies who actually pursue renewable technologies.
Yep. Okay, so now what we're looking at is a graph. This just shows grams of CO2 equivalent, and grams of CO2 equivalent, and the reason for the little E there is that each gram of CO2 has if and when you take 102 in the spring, and we read that Solomon paper, it shows what the warming effects are of CO2 versus methane versus NOx and other greenhouse gases per kilowatt hour. So for every kilowatt hour of electricity that comes out of either lignite or hard coal or combined cycle hard coal, oil, natural gas, nuclear, biomass, you can see that once we've gotten past all of these conventional fossil fuels, the CO2 equivalent per kilowatt hour goes down substantially. Where's the CO2 coming from in all of these guys? Well, with nuclear, you had to build the plant, lots of concrete, lots of CO2 comes off. Biomass, typically you are setting something on fire, whether it's ethanol or woody biomass, what have you. PV solar takes energy to make it. You gotta mine the silicon, and it's very energy intensive. Concentrating solar, same deal. You still have to build the plant. Geothermal, a little bit of emissions associated with the drilling. Onshore and offshore wind, very little CO2. And then hydro, I'm a little confused by why the hydro is so large, but again, a lot of concrete. And I think the book also mentioned the fact that when you dam up a lot of vegetation, there's methane that comes off because of anaerobic digestion that goes on underneath the water.
Solar isn't higher considering the amount of mining necessary for the rare elements that go into it.
Yeah, well, we'll see where that goes. I mean, there was a neat paper that just came out of China on relatively inexpensive low-tech method for recycling solar PV. So after these PV panels go through enough thermal cycling, they get little cracks in them and they become more resistive. But it's just most of these conventional silicon, it's just silicon, phosphorus, and boron, and the atoms are there, and so it's. I was even talking with Ryan a little bit about the end of life cycle of these wind turbines. And I said, well, what do you guys do with these guys when they're done? When they're cooked? As the generators. Well, a lot of times they'll. And Judith Gap is one example. It is the oldest installation in Montana. It's also the windiest, and so these turbines really take a beating. But what they've seen is typically to their benefit to take them down, refurb the generators, and then sell them somewhere else to a developing country where they don't need the big profit margins that we might need here. The demands aren't as high, and they can run the turbines at lower capacity factor. So sort of, like getting a few more miles out of your truck. You wouldn't take it on the interstate, but it's okay to putt around town in. So another thing to look at, end of life cycle of some of these guys. Okay. All right. So in our last chapter, we talked about costing energy. So relatively simple to get your gas turbine up and running. It's just it's relatively simple to run to build the plant. Much simpler than all of the combustion technology required for coal. You can see that's much more expensive. If you're going to do combined cycle, then it's more complex, more technology. Nuclear, there's so many safety regulations, the capital costs are quite high. Onshore wind is similar to nuclear. Once you're going offshore, now you're talking underwater welding, you're talking some pretty high-end tech to get those in place. Reservoir hydro, this is Gordon Butte right there. So let's just look at that number. I'll give you, well, I'm just going to do it because we're kind of running low on time, but we're looking at let's just call it 8 pence per kilowatt hour, and I'm going to convert that to the $1 billion per 400 megawatts. So let's just do that. So 8 pence, so 8p per kilowatt hour. And then what's the conversion rate between cents and pence?
That'd be that'd be 16 cents.
Is it double?
I think, or it's 1.5.
1.5, yeah, so let's see, so,
Well,
yeah, so 1p, I'm just gonna call it 1.5 cents. Okay, so what's that come out to? 16 plus 8, 24, is that right? Did I do that right? Let me see.
that's times 2, I thought. So 1.5, I don't know how.
Well, so let's just call it 20, let's just call it 20, oh, yeah, let's see, 8, sorry, 8 plus 4 would be 12. Let's just call it somewhere between, that'd be 3 actually, wouldn't it? Hang on. 5, 8, 12. Let's just call it 12 to 16 cents per kilowatt hour. The Gordon Butte, and then I guess what you then have to do is look at the lifetime of the project. Gordon Butte is coming in at 1 billion per 400 megawatts. And so that ends up being about 2.2. Yeah, the comparison isn't that fair, but 2.2 cents per, or no, let's see here, 2. I guess more like $2.2 per watt. And that's actually pretty competitive. So what we'd have to do if we want to do a fair comparison of those two is look at the, here's your power, here's your time, and so you have to look at the total lifetime production. So this number down here is looking at what the total plant capacity is, and this number right here is looking at what the total production is. So we can play around with that a little bit more, but you can kind of see where I was going with that. All right, so here's that worldometers graph again. So this goes right back to that summary 3 when you guys are looking at population and you're looking at gigatons of CO2 per year, and you can see that we're knocking on 30 billion tons per year.
He was 33.
Yeah, let's take a look. Yeah, let's take a look at our worldometers just so you can put these two numbers in perspective.
I was talking to a geologist from Britain, and he informed me that they believe that if you wanted to conceptualize that into something solid, the White Cliffs of Dover contain approximately 30 gigatons of CO2.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So if you were to condense that, what we're putting in the atmosphere every year, there'd be an extra mountain range on.
Oh, wow.
Here.
So let's just tie in the book with the, yeah, so there it is, 34 billion. So we're, this was in 2010, so we're, right around here, close to the end of the year. What they're showing here is CO2 versus carbon, and that's just your 12 to 44 ratio, because there's atomic mass of carbon is 12, atomic mass of CO2 is 44. That's that ratio. Okay, so here's a little shot of the carbon cycle. And what we're looking at are gigatons of carbon. So that's a pretty big range. 4 to 10,000 gigatons. And we can look at this a little bit more. There's a paper that just came out recently out of Georgia, University of Georgia, that kind of looks at this on a much larger scale. Here's we talk a lot of times about what how much carbon dioxide the ocean can hold. And the way to think about this is that, most gases are soluble in water. CO2 is in fact soluble in water. And one of the interesting things to note is that if we're sitting here at 400 ppm, if we start to grow more trees, and here's the one, let's see, here's one little arrow of the carbon sink. Another little arrow is, after the animal has died or after the plant has died, these can go back into the soil. And I just mentioned that, biochar being another potential carbon sink. But the point was, if we do grow more trees, bring CO2 out of the air, this air-water system still equilibrates. In the same way that you're, eventually when you open that can of soda, the bubbles, come back out because they've been forced into that soda under pressure. So the air and the ocean will always sort of want to reach that CO2 concentration equilibrium.
I heard that the acidic of the ocean, the acidity of it is going up. And
Yeah.
affecting the phytoplankton and like the shells for like limestone.
Yeah.
Instead of like the shells
Calcium
falling.
shells.
Yeah.
Calcium is dissolving it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are oyster farms that are already seeing their numbers plummet.
I read that an oyster farm in Oregon, Astoria, that was talking about that.
Yeah, I've seen that too. There's some kind of bad news coming out of the Great Barrier Reef too on that same
Oh
plant.
gosh, it's just bleached dead.
Same front.
Yep.
Okay, so here is sort of looking at the relative effects of different both there's some of this is human induced, some of it is natural. So right here we're just looking at the solar irradiance tends to heat the earth. I mean, if we didn't have the sun, we'd be quite, the sun in the atmosphere would be pretty cold. And this is the little number to watch. So if you remember back earlier when we were doing our chapter 1 and chapter 2 stuff, we said that at the top of the clouds, we're looking at 1,300 watts per square meter. Once you get through the clouds, you're looking at about 1,000 watts per square meter. So all this stuff down here is in the tenths of percentages. And so you can think of these numbers in the same way you might think about the interest on your bank account, right? So is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? So all of these different activities. So pumping CO2 into the atmosphere, there's not really a question. It just makes the atmosphere hotter. Same thing with methane. Same thing with NOx. And then these halocarbons, those are the ones that were just banned, all the CFC and those guys. Now the ozone, if it's high, it can bounce radiation off and tends towards cooling. If it's low, if you've got when you hear these ozone days, because there's a lot of extra ozone in the air. If it's low, it'll warm you. If it's high, it'll cool you. And there's even plans out there, it's kind of wild, but to do a little bit of geoengineering, I don't know if you heard this, but actually sending SO2 up into the upper atmosphere to do some reflection.
Sulfuric acid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is, if the surface of the Earth is blacker, it absorbs more energy. No secret out there. Shauna Munns is building a solar tech in the bullpen right now. Strangely enough, if you've got the white roofs and white concrete, it bounces the radiation back. There's even some technologies now that will absorb absorb the full spectrum of sunlight and actually shoot radiation back into through the atmosphere that penetrates the CO2, so that's under, yeah. So more clouds, like I just showed you here in this little graph, tend to reduce the warming, et cetera. So a lot of different effects. Then there's been the contrail conspiracies there too. Okay. So water, ecosystems, food, coastline, health, discontinuities, and this is just showing increase in global mean surface temperatures. This is sort of like what's happening, if the world gets warmer. So for example, if it gets super warm, you start losing coastal wetlands. There's just more volume in the ocean. If you get too hot, you can't grow cereal anymore. What else is happening here? Ecosystems start dying, et cetera, et cetera. Additional people with increased water stress because there's just less predictable rainfall in some places. So here's sort of moving away from conventional fossil fuels. So biogas, this would be capturing something from the sewer. Liquefied petroleum for transportation. These are conventional non-renewables. Wood can be one or the other, depending on where it's coming from. Crop residues. There was even just a article my dad sent me today where the state of Indiana is looking for better uses of their waste off their farms. Dung is another one. But each one of them is associated with some kind of CO2 equivalent per megajoule. And this is just showing, if you're living near a large pollution center, doesn't mean it's going to kill you immediately, but it does mean there are health impacts as a result of living near smog. And what is this figure? Chapter 15, figure 15. Oh, yeah, so this is actually kind of a good news slide. This shows pollutants in the UK. So on the top is sulfur dioxide dropping, and then B is the particulates. So the top is showing that the amount of sulfur in the atmosphere has dropped in the UK, as have the amount of particulates, just smog, basically.
Well, that's exciting.
It is good. This is a shot showing.
Brad.
Oh, we read it 51. Oh, okay, super, guys. All right, well, hey, I'll see you on Tuesday. We'll finish up the book, and have a good weekend.
Thanks, you too.
Okay, thanks. That was the last figure anyway. Cool.
Are you busy finals week?
I shouldn't be.
I would just like to swing by your office and talk to you for a little